back to room 237, and I'm nearing the end of my Italian horror and Giallo film marathon. I have about 4 more Gialli coming in, but they're not here yet. Otherwise, I'm all caught up, so why not start into my Argento films, which I was going to save for last. But I have already done his Masters of Horror films and Four Flies on Grey Velvet as far as this marathon goes. So I've already dipped into them. Why not continue? And this is one that I was kind of putting off, but it had my curiosity. And it's the 2009 film, I guess, Giallo. That's the name of the movie. And it's not that this is the Italian title and it's called Giallo. It's just Giallo. Apparently this is a Giallo. I don't understand how or why, but I mean, not just on internet where people don't know what they're talking about and just applying it because there's a killer, an investigation. It's an Argento film. But everywhere, literally every source seems to be calling this Giallo, even the Troy Howarth books. So I'm guessing Giallo. I mean, maybe it's supposed to be a nuanced type Giallo. I don't see it. I mean, this is one, it's more like Silence of the Lambs than a Giallo film. I mean, we see the killer about halfway through, face and everything. There's no real twist. I guess there was or is an alternate ending somewhere that would have changed the identity of the killer. But as far as this goes, yeah, we know who the killer is. We even see him in his lair doing his thing with a live captive victim, would-be victim. So, yeah, we know who the killer is. But there is simultaneously an investigation going on. But the thing about Argento, first thing I'll say is, it's like The Card Player, where that one doesn't really feel like an Argento film. It feels more like a CSI or NCIS. It feels more like a procedural, like a TV show. This feels like it's gone more into the torture porn genre, like, because it's trying to be very extreme. I mean, it's tame compared to other things that are out there. But as far as what Argento has done and what we've seen in some Gialli, and I mean, this is 2009. This is towards the end of the Saw franchise. Hostel sequels have been out, or at least Hostel 1 and 2 have been out. Torture porn genre, I think it already peaked and was coming down. But maybe he was trying to mix that in. Another thing is that Argento was director for hire for this. This is not an Argento, he did not write this. So there's no real personal care that went into it. At least it doesn't feel that way. The intention of this film was, it was written by Jim Agnew and Sean Keller, and then once Argento came on board, he helped with the writing. But back when it was Agnew and Keller, they're Giallo fans, and they wanted to do a stylish Giallo that paid homage to Argento, Bava, Martino, Fulci. But then when Argento came on board, he said, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that anymore. I want to do it as realistic as possible. I don't want to do those stylish films anymore. Which is really ironic because it's called Giallo. You would think if Argento makes a movie called Giallo, it would have been the film that encapsulated what made him popular, what made his career, and supposed him returning to form in a very big way. But instead, he's just the director and co-writer. And it really barely is a Giallo to begin with. Oddly enough, I did like it a little bit more than the card player, but that's not saying much. I mean, I think part of it is because I've heard so many terrible things about this movie. I've heard how panned it was. Everyone I know that has seen it absolutely hates it. I've seen bad Argento. I mean, I've seen Phantom of the Opera. I haven't seen the worst of his films yet. I have them. I'll get to them. So I think my expectations were absolutely rock bottom. That it didn't seem as bad. So, but that's really not saying much. And of course, there's some notorious stuff that happened. Like once it went into post-production, it was kind of taken away from Argento when he lost a lot of control. Him and star Adrian Brody were not paid their salaries, so Brody took the producers to court, held off the release of the film till they were paid, and then it had a very belated and very limited release that didn't really amount to anything. And I guess the worst part about this film is the potential and what this could have been. Yeah, it's not a great movie at all. It's barely even a good movie. But the worst thing about it is the potential. I mean, we could have had a movie called Giallo that Argento directed, and he really wanted to get back to. And I mean, even Bird with the Crystal Plumage isn't ultra stylish. I mean, he does a lot of great things with the camera, but it's not like Suspiria stylish. And there are some moments, I mean, when we have Adrian Brody's flashbacks, that kind of feels like classic Argento. But, and also what I was thinking was, after the first couple scenes of violence, I was thinking back to Tenebrae, because before Tenebrae, Argento did Inferno. Inferno did not do that well when it first came out, because Argento was seen as the Giallo master, which he is. He did Suspiria, people liked. Then he did Inferno, people did not really like. People were like, you're the Giallo guy. We wanted to just see you do Giallo. Also, slashers had exploded at that time. They were like, this is what we want. So he did Tenebrae, and it happened to be the most violent, bloody, and cynical film that he did up to that point. Almost as if to say, oh, is that what you want? Okay, well, here, choke on this. I kind of had these vibes, but then I did a little bit more reading after watching it, and I saw this is something he was enthusiastic about, but he wanted to go in a different direction. And when I saw he didn't fully write it, I kind of scrapped that whole idea, because I was thinking, okay, it's called Giallo, but you know, of course, for those that don't know, Giallo is the Italian word for yellow. Called that because of the pulpy, noir, Penny Dreadful novels from the 30s, 40s, and 50s that all had yellow spines or yellow covers. Those kind of murder mysteries inspired the genre. It's called Giallo in this because the killer has jaundice. He has yellow skin, and that is kind of a plot point. But when you read the back of it, it addresses the killer as Yellow, like that's his nickname. There's no headlines that says Yellow or Yellow Killer. The only time he's called Yellow as a nickname is in a flashback when he's being bullied. So even that doesn't really play, and it's not like the Yellow Killer as kind of like an Easter egg or a nod. It's kind of almost feels like a satire, and I know that's been said before. But also, it does, at a time of Saw and Hostel being very popular, I mean, we see the killer, who I believe was also, I just want to double check because I heard this. Okay, now it says, okay, Baby Yellow. Supposedly it was Adrian Brody playing the killer as well, but under heavy makeup, which I kind of thought that was him. And they went through some serious steps to keep that a secret, but I guess most people saw right through it. Here on Wikipedia, it doesn't say Adrian Brody as Yellow. Instead, he's not even credited at all. Oh yeah, he is. I just didn't scroll down far enough. But yeah, the look, you can tell it's a lot of makeup. It doesn't look like a regular person. Not just the yellow, but to make him look trolly and ugly like how he's supposed to. Because, I mean, this was after he won the Oscar for The Pianist. And also, I think Brody was dating Elsa Pataki at the time, who's the main victim we follow. So it had some Oscar cast kind of prestige around it. But yeah, this movie that in theory and in potential could have been so awesome. It would have been like if George Romero around this time made a movie just called The Living Dead, and made the ultimate zombie movie in classic Romero style. If this accomplished what it could have been and what it should have been. Instead, it would have been like if Romero released a film called The Living Dead, and instead was like the Day of the Dead remake, the first one, or barely a zombie movie. Yeah, the worst thing about this movie is that the potential, it failed to live up to it. And the more I read about it, it really is disappointing that Argento directed a movie called Giallo, even had a hand in writing, and it's not even this encapsulating type film. In fact, it barely even qualifies as a Giallo. Anyway, okay, so it opens up with this girl being abducted. It's this Japanese girl. I think she was an actress, a stage actress. It takes place in Turin, Italy. But, okay, it shows a couple girls being abducted. One of which is a model, which is the Celine, played by Pataki. And when we see the killer, I mean, we even see the killer's eyes. He's a cab driver. We see he's got this curly, long hair with a bandana. We see his eyes in the rearview mirror. He injects her right here with something to knock her out. I mean, it has some things like that, like just kind of odd, out of the ordinary ways of doing things, like injecting someone like right near the eyebrow. And then when we see him and his victims, because there's already this other girl down there, this Japanese girl, it's this dingy warehouse type setting that you would see in a Saw movie. He does have some oddities, like we do see him at one point he's looking at a pornographic manga. He's got a baby pacifier in his mouth. We kind of see him back too. And then he's on his laptop looking at pictures of his victims after he's tortured them. And he starts pleasuring himself. That's what I mean by it feels like he's trying to push the boundaries of the torture porn genre. How the only real stylish thing that's done violently, I will say one thing that did work was he tortures the Japanese girl while the Celine is on the floor, and he takes these like gardening snippers and he pulls on her upper lip, and as he's going to cut, the camera pans past them and focuses on Celine and her reaction. I mean, okay, it's not showing us anything, but it's more effective that way. Celine's sister, played by Emmanuel Signer, if I pronounce that correctly. She teams up with Adrian Brody, or more so follows him around until he gives in. He's this, unorthodox, do what you gotta do type inspector named Enzo, who has a very dark past. He knows how to think like a killer, and he's already been working on this case. So he kind of takes her along. He feels the sympathy, and that there's a chance she's still alive. The girl is still alive. So and that's also the only real Giallo that makes it feel less procedural, is that he's kind of doing it himself. I mean, he is still part of the force, obviously, but he doesn't really check in with anyone. He kind of does all his sleuthing by himself and with this person that's not in law enforcement. I mean, there's been Giallo where the person solving the case is in law enforcement. My Dear Killer is one. That's a better movie, though. And eventually, he doesn't even get the name Giallo, really. It's more so because the body of the Japanese girl is found, but she's still barely alive. Adrian Brody takes his tape recorder, records what she's saying. He has a Japanese guy translate it, where she says, he's yellow. Of course, they don't know what that means. Then it hits the sister that he must have jaundice. Which, I mean, also things the killer does is it shows that he huffs nitrous out of a Cool Whip can, which, yeah, take a hit of that and then see if you'll be able to cut someone up. And then he does this weird scene where Celine is berating him, calling him ugly and hideous, and he's doing this weird, like, he has flashbacks to his childhood, like his mother, who was a heroin addict. And then when he was born, she dropped him off at a church in a plastic shopping bag. He was bullied at school. Kids called him yellow. And even when he was getting bullied, even the nurses dragged him away by the ear. And, he's got rotten teeth. He can't speak very well. And he's still hitting nitrous. But, I mean, it goes at a decent pace. It's only 92 minutes, but yeah, like halfway through, it has like the Silence of the Lambs kind of play out. Because even though he picks Celine up in the beginning, about halfway through, we see him, we see his face, know what he looks like. We see him in his lair doing his thing with this captive. And then that takes us through the movie. So, I mean, can I call it? It's not, I guess the only real spoilers would be if she's found or not. Or so, I mean, I guess I can get into spoilers, but Yeah, I don't really know what to make of this film. It's it's disappointing knowing what the intention was and what its potential is. But I didn't think it was as bad as people say. So it's like I was impressed and disappointed at the same time. It's a very weird feeling. It's not a good movie. It's not. The acting seems a bit stiff. I mean, Adrian Brody, it's not that he's doing a bad job. It's just that he's very dry. And then as the killer, it's like, that feels like he's over the top at trying to be this psycho. It, it, some of the effects, I mean, when it does show him in flashback killing his earlier victims. And when we see the hammer go through the forehead of this one girl, I mean, it looked decent, but it's not as torture porny as, say, a Saw film. It just, like, is trying to be a bit more disturbing or have more of that appeal or atmosphere. But yeah, I guess I'll get into spoilers. I can't really recommend it. Again, and if you do check out, definitely do not expect it to be one of those Giallo where you as an audience member can also play detective and try to pick up clues. The only real Argento thing would be some of the camera work. I mean, we do get from Adrian Brody from his past, he witnessed his mother being killed. And there's a lot of, tracking and, panning shots, like going all through the house and like up the stairs and around, kind of like Tenebrae when it's outside going through all the windows. Even the way his mother is killed is kind of opera-ish, or at least of that period. And the way it's lit, I mean, has this very gold, Godfather-y type hazy look to it. And then it's funny because the clinic where all the jaundice patients are has yellow walls. That had to be a joke. But, yeah, I don't know what to say about it, but I'm going to get into spoilers. So after they figure out that he's yellow means he must have jaundice, they look into this major clinic that has help for jaundice patients. The woman there won't help him out, but Adrian Brody sees this sketchy person who is the killer. He chases him down, loses him, and then to sort of scare the nurse at the counter, shows her all the crime scene photos, and she gives him a paper with his name and address, which is like Flavio Volpe. So they go to his place, and it's like this dilapidated kind of where he sees places that we've been before. Like he finds the pornographic manga and the laptop. He finds all the proof he needs that it's him, but he's not there. And while this is going on, Celine, he did cut her finger off, which when he cut her finger off, the blood didn't look very convincing. She was able to slip the rope loose, get away from him for a little bit, but he caught up to her. And as he's strangling her, she says, my sister can help you. Implying she's rich, but also, at first I thought it meant she can help you with your looks, because it really hinted towards, he's driven by how ugly he is and he likes to destroy beautiful things. But it turns out, yeah, he's gonna go to the sister for ransom, for, a way to get like a plane ticket, help getting there, and also makeup to help his complexion. So yeah, he breaks into, well, so while he's at the sister's apartment, Adrian Brody tries to go. He figures out, it has something to do with Blue Torch, figuring out like where he worked or something. Well, no, he works at the taxi place, but something to do with Blue Torch. So he knows he's doing his killings and keeping his victims at some gasworks place. So he goes back to the sister's apartment to tell her, but she's just like, "Oh, I'm tired. Don't worry about it. Come back tomorrow." He knows that's sketchy. So he waits for them to come out. Then there's a chase. He's got a pistol. Giallo has a shotgun. Make it up to a rooftop. The sister's trying to stop Brody the entire time. Eventually, they're on like this catwalk where they're each holding an end of the rifle, but Giallo slips off the rifle, falls through the skylight. He's holding on to one of the window frames, which is covered in glass. He's able, and then he falls, which actually first, before he falls off the catwalk, there's this thing that you would see in like a 70s film where he goes like, ah, like it's like he's standing in place but they're making it look like he's falling, and then they cut to the dummy falling. I mean, when he actually lands and the head splats, I mean, that looked fine. So now the sister hates him because he never told her where Celine was, like he promised. He tells her, no, he never would have anyway. Also, he tells her that the reason why he can think like a killer and why he got into this line of work, which this is after they leave the lead of where he lives, and he calls and tells his superior inspector. They go out for a drink, and he tells her, after my mother was killed, I lived with these relatives. I started getting in trouble. They shipped me back to Italy. Now, when I was 14, I went to this one place, like a bakery or something, and I saw the guy worked there. So I waited, and then I went there and I killed the guy. We got in a fight. He beat him nearly to death, and then he stabbed him a bunch of times. And through the window, his superior inspector saw him and apparently bought the whole story, because he says, then it cuts back to Adrian Brody. He's like, I explained the whole thing to him, and it's like, and he believed it. Okay, in the context of the film, which I guess Brody kept the knife. He either kept that knife or the one that killed his mother, because in the beginning it shows that he keeps it in his desk in like a red cloth, and he takes it out and looks at it once in a while. And he says, that event really messed him up, and now he can think like a killer. And it ends with the police force going to the place he said, like the gasworks place. They can't find her. So that's when she hates Adrian Brody now. And then there's like the security guard at the parking garage. Walking through the parking garage, and we see that Celine is still alive, but in the trunk of a car. She's making noise because she can hear him, but he kind of hears her, but doesn't know where it's coming from. And then we see his taxi with, blood pooling on the bottom of it. And then it kind of zooms in on the puddle, and, written, directed by Dario Argento. So, I mean, I like that it's left ambiguous, but I am curious as what the alternate ending would be. Would have been that changed the identity. Maybe it would have made it more of a Giallo. And then some of the details I like is that, yeah, they do use, like when he says the killer uses what's called overkill. That is a legitimate term that they use when they say a serial killer goes nuts and continues torturing and killing, mutilating long after the victim's been dead. Or in like a frenzy, like when they're stabbing, they stab like 100 times nonstop. They go overboard with the killing itself. It's like, okay, they're using real terms, and like, it's kind of nice detail. But again, I was gonna say they could have just named it after the killer, but the killer's name is Giallo. So maybe if this was called something else, and it didn't have that aura of Argento making a movie called Giallo, that's really gonna, sum up the entire genre and everything he helped create or co-create. And technically he did create Giallo as we know it, because the Giallo Bava created was different. Argento redefined it. But yeah, huge letdown. Very little style, and it would explain why Sleepless and Card Player don't really have that much style to them. I still need to see Do You Like Hitchcock? I do have it, I just need to get to it. Which I guess that one also doesn't really have much style to it either, because Argento was just into shooting things as realistically as possible. But, like Brody's flashback to his mother's murder and him killing the guy, those had some Argento style filmmaking that, helped the film. It kind of brought back the, oh, there it is, we're in an Argento film. But, and yeah, I kind of got the same vibe, everything that had to do with the killer, other than the really silly looking makeup, like just everything they do with him to try to make him this vile monster, almost the same vibes I get from watching a Rob Zombie film. Like they're trying a little too hard, like to make him disturbing, having him masturbate to pictures of his bloodied victims while he has a baby pacifier in his mouth, and he's kind of chuckling and giggling. It's like they might be trying a little bit too hard. But yeah, the most disappointing thing is the potential of what it could have been. Not just what it could have been, but what they tried to do. And above all, the person that was against doing that was Argento himself. That's an even bigger kick in the nuts. But yeah, I mean, the movie itself isn't that great. I heard awful things, but it wasn't as bad as I thought it was gonna be. Still not a good movie, but yeah, the title's gonna be, instead of Giallo movie review, there's gonna be a question mark after Giallo, because the whole world says it is. It's part of the genre, but I don't really see how. It's as much a Giallo as Silence of the Lambs is. But, alright. But anyway, until I get those last couple Gialli, I guess I'll be doing Argento films. But, so yeah. I got a few more to get to. I have Cat of Nine Tails, Do You Like Hitchcock, Mother of Tears, and his Dracula film. So I got those 4 to get to. And then the last 4 Gialli. Then I'm done with Italian films. Then I'll just be doing the Giallo homage, tribute, sort of neo-Giallo films. So stay tuned for those, and thank you for watching.